Creepers News Network. I'm your host Creeper79 and today's top story. Breaking news as for the first time in 19 years, the Taliban have taken the Afghanistani capital of Kabul. The Taliban swept into Afghanistan's capital Sunday after the government collapsed and the embattled president, Ashraf Ghani, joined an exodus of his fellow citizens and foreigners, signaling the end of a costly 2-decade US and NATO campaign to remake the country. This comes not long after the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson sent 600 British troops to the city in order to evacuate British personnel and civilians and Afghanistanis who have helped the British and may face reprisals by the Taliban. In an interview with The Guardian, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he does not want Afghanistan to become another breeding ground of terror, and that he acknowledges that there will be a new government in Kabul, no matter the outcome of the war.
Or there is going to be very shortly a new government in Kabul, or a new political dispensation, however you want to put it. And I think it's very important that the West collectively should work together to get over to that new government, be it by the Taliban or anybody else, that nobody wants Afghanistan once again to be a breeding ground for terror, and we don't think that it's in the interests of the people of Afghanistan that it should lapse back into that state, that pre-2001 state.
A Taliban official said the group would announce from the palace the restoration of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, the formal name of the country under Taliban rule, before militants were ousted by US-led forces in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, which were orchestrated by Al-Qaeda when it was being sheltered by the Taliban, but that plan appeared to be on hold. Kabul was gripped by panic. Helicopters raced overhead throughout the day to evacuate personnel from the US Embassy. Smoke rose near the compound as staff destroyed important documents and the American flag was lowered. Several other Western missions also prepared to pull their people out. Fearful that the Taliban could reimpose the kind of brutal rule that all but eliminated women's rights, Afghans rushed to leave the country, lining up at cash machines to withdraw their life savings. The desperately poor, who had left homes in the countryside for the presumed safety of the capital, remained in parks and open spaces throughout the city. Though the Taliban has promised a peaceful transition, the US Embassy suspended operations and warned Americans late in the day to shelter in place and try not to get to the airport. Commercial flights were suspended after sporadic gunfire erupted at the Kabul airport. According to two senior US military officials, evacuations continued on military flights, but the halt to commercial traffic closed off one of the last routes available for fleeing Afghan civilians. Abdullah, the head of the National Afghanistan Reconciliation Council and a long-time rival of Ghani, said, "The former president of Afghanistan has left Afghanistan, leaving the country in this difficult situation. God should hold him accountable." Ghani later posted on Facebook that he left to avert bloodshed in the capital, without saying where he had gone. In a stunning rout, the Taliban seized nearly all of Afghanistan in just over a week, despite the billions of dollars spent by US and NATO over nearly 20 years to build up Afghan security forces. Just days earlier, an American military assessment estimated that the capital would not come under insurgent pressure for a month. The fall of Kabul marks the final chapter of America's longest war, which began after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. A US-led invasion dislodged the Taliban and beat them back, but America lost focus on the conflict in the chaos of the Iraq War. For years, the US sought an exit from Afghanistan. Then President Donald Trump signed a deal with the Taliban in February 2020 that limited direct military action against insurgents, that allowed the fighters to gather strength and move quickly to seize key areas when President Joe Biden announced his plans to withdraw all American forces by the end of this month. After the insurgents entered Kabul, Taliban negotiators discussed a transfer of power and said an Afghan official The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss details of the closed-door negotiations, described them as tense. It remained unclear when that transfer would take place and who among the Taliban was negotiating. The negotiators on the government side included former President Hamid Karzai, the leader of the Hizb-e-Islami political and paramilitary group, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, and Abdullah, who has been a vocal critic of Ghani. Karzai himself appeared in a video posted online, his three young daughters around him, saying he remained in Kabul. Later, Afghan forces at Bagram airbase, home to a prison housing 5,000 inmates, surrendered to the Taliban. According to Bagram District Chief Darash Rafi, the prison at the former US base held both Taliban and Islamic State group fighters. In other news, South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has reportedly told former US President Donald Trump to speak up on the COVID-19 vaccine. After he's recovered from a breakthrough infection of the coronavirus, Lindsey Graham said that he has urged former President Trump to press his supporters to get the vaccine, which the Republican called the antidote to the virus that is wreaking havoc on our hospitals. Graham said that he has urged the president to be aggressive and say, "Take the vaccine," in an extensive interview with the Associated Press, his first since disclosing a few weeks ago that he had tested positive for the virus. Saying he felt achy and kind of yucky through the weekend, Graham said Thursday that his symptoms had been steadily improving, although Monday and Tuesday were pretty tough days. He said he believed his symptoms would have been much worse had he not been vaccinated. And tonight's final story. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called a snap summer general election as Canada enters into its pandemic's fourth wave. The general election comes as polls indicate his minority Liberal government looks within reach of forming a majority. The 49-year-old Liberal leader says Canadians need to choose how we finish the fight against COVID-19. Canadians will vote on the 20th of September, some 2 years ahead of schedule. On Sunday, Mr. Trudeau visited Canada's Governor-General Mary Simon, the representative of the Queen, Canada's head of state, and asked her to dissolve Parliament. The leader of the centrist Liberals said a general election was necessary so voters have a choice on the path forward at a pivotal moment. In October 2019, voters handed him a minority, meaning he has had to rely on opposition parties to help him pass his agenda. Opposition parties criticised the Liberals for calling a 5-week-long campaign during the pandemic's latest wave for political gain. The global coronavirus pandemic is sure to dominate the campaign, as it has much of Mr. Trudeau's second term. Over 25,000 Canadians have died from COVID, but the country fared better than others, such as the US. Still, its record under the pandemic has been mixed. It was slow to close its borders. The military had to be sent into some elderly care homes to help contain outbreaks. The initial vaccine rollout was slow, with Mr. Trudeau facing questions over the lack of domestic vaccine production. The government was quick to get pandemic relief spending out the door, though it has racked up record levels of debt to do so. Thank you for watching CNN News. I have been your host, Creeper79. All information is correct as of the 16th of August 2021. Thank you for watching and good night.